Peace, human families of the planet Earth. I'm your host, Aseer the Duke of Tears, along with my co-host, Alina the Empress of 10,000 Years. Whoop, 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 whoop. More. Saga Aside. All of you, thank you for coming through and also blessing us with your presence once again. Send love and light to all of the ancestors and people who, God forbid, may have lost somebody in the interim since the last time we spoke. We definitely want to put one in the air for those people who are coming from or dealing with that type of loss. So I did already. So, with that, we want to say love and light to you. Also, just to let you know that this is the time when a lot of our brothers and sisters that's leaving, seem like they're leaving early, is actually going right when they decided to do whatever work they got to do to help us all on the other side. So we definitely want to give thanks and praise to that. We want to also give thanks and praise to everybody, all of the elders and those people who came before us that wanted to drop the good news and let us know what the real deal was, but maybe we weren't in the position to understand it as that. So we definitely want to give thanks and praise for that, Also, something else. Also, happy HJR 75 day, I knew, which was May 4th, which for those people that don't know, HJR 75 was ratified on May 4th, 3 days after May 1st, which was actually the day that they declared their bankruptcy. So somehow or another, somebody decided that it was important enough for them to put the Moors on to certain understanding about who they were prior to the United States government going totally bankrupt. You know what I'm saying? So that says a lot in terms of what we should be understanding about our true position in this place. You know what I'm saying? So we definitely want to do the nods to that. Also, for those people who like the song you heard earlier, that's from Team Cordoba, which consists of myself and my wife, Samantha the Empress of 10,000 Years. We did an album under the name Team Cordoba to act as a soundtrack to our book. Also, anybody that wants to holler at us about any of the nationalities, paperwork, and things like that, again, you can email us at houseofel@hotmail.com, and we'll definitely deal with you in a private one-on-one session and make sure that everything that you need in terms of that is correct. So, we can get into the current events like we always do, but I also want to kind of take time to, again, give thanks and praise to brothers as well as sisters who have blessed me in my life to help consolidate and bring forth the information that sometimes I may instinctively know but may not always be have the proof on hand to show and prove. So when people come through and actually bless me with the stuff that I need to continue to work, I really take that very seriously and with love, really give respect and praise to those people. So again, thank you for coming through in the clutch with the real knowledge. You know who you are. So let's start. There's a lot of stuff going on, as usual. But as we always do, we like to look at the things that are mainly relative to us. And one of the things that's been going on, like I said, for a little while now, is a lot of political infighting going on between members of the so-called United States government and the rest of their constituency. We are in the midst of a pseudo civil war that's basically taking place amongst factions within the United States government that are loyal to a concept called liberalism, right? And those people who are functioning under the premise of republicanism. Liberalism, in a sense, is an advent of something that was created out of what we would call the democracy. And the democracy demonstration is one that basically lets you know that government itself is strictly demonstrative, meaning that government is there to demonstrate how a civilized society that is not in isonomy is supposed to work. So in isonomy, according to C.M. Bay, is one of the greatest things that would ever or can ever exist. It is the very basis of God's so-called government on earth as it is in heaven. Therefore, all of the different factions that come out that we understand as governmental positions today are really just byproducts, if you will, or pseudo or tentacles off of the octopus that is isonomy. So democracy, republicanism, monarchism, monarchies, aristocracies, oligarchies, corporatocracies, technocracies, anything like that is dealing with a so-called elements or little elements of an actual isonomy. Because what an isonomy is kind of all of that and none of that at the same time. The breakdown of isonomy is I, sun, right, I. Or if we spell it, it would be ISONOMI. Now, those people who are familiar with C.M. Bay's work, The Clock of Destiny, Volumes 1 and 2, as well as The Great Seal of Manasseh, another great book he did, or was a part of at least, basically gets into the understanding of what the Great Seal and what a true government really is. And true governments have an antecedent. An antecedent is, or a precept, are the people that this government came out of. Therefore, because you are a so-called 14th Amendment citizen, which was offered to your ancestors as an offer to not go back into their government, this is why the United States can say that you actually abandoned your government. Because what they refer to as the government of Morocco in manifestation of the kingdom is not what we would perceive as the true Morocco. That is a lot of the energy in which your power is vested. That kingdom of Morocco happened to be, in a sense, founded or came into the present position after World War II. Therefore, this came after the reconstructed history was given to the rest of the world about what Morocco or who that really is, because that has been basically made an issue between the French, the Spanish, and the British for a couple hundred years, meaning that the French, the British, and the Spanish got together specifically to work to denationalize the true inheritors of the so-called Moorish Empire. Now, when we talk about the Moorish Empire and we talk about the Al-Moroccan Empire, right, we're talking about the same thing, but in varying degrees. But we'll come back to that in a second. What's really going on is that there were things put into motion by your ancestors that came into a better position for you now, based upon the epoch of time that we exist in right now. Yet, we have not fully realized this because we are still functioning as foreigners to our own country, because the so-called system has made us separate from our bodies. So when you tell a Caucasian or European or somebody, white person, or somebody who considers himself white, and you tell them stuff like, you know, you've been locked up for not having a piece of ID on you or anything like that, they look at you sometimes like you're lying, like you're exaggerating, because a lot of times that won't happen to people who are phenotypically perceived as white, right? Because those people fall under a different designation in terms of the system of how the United States is structured. You know what I'm saying? They don't have a understanding of the system the way that you have it, because this system of the United States was perpetuated to disenfranchise the people who initially set up the so-called government for them. So once our people agreed to allow these people to set up their own situation, right, they created a out for themselves that would allow them to put the same people who put them on outside of their own self. And then once they got put outside of their government, they found a way to separate them from their bodies. The true invasion of the body snatchers is what happened in 1779. So most modern Moors don't understand why we place an importance on understanding these things, because those things are what bear the relevance on the law today. Law today is based on the historical maxims of law from days of old. So the only way that they can actively, so that means then if they are using legislation that gives them the right to do things to you that's from the 1700s and all of that, that's saying that they have the right to do that to you now, why is it that when you use that somehow or another they're saying that you're trying to pull out some archaic old thing that doesn't have any relevance, when everything that they're dealing with is coming from a statute aspect of that? But you have to remember, it's critical for you to realize is that in 1774 there was no United States and there was no England. That thing that we're calling England is really the 13 colonies on the eastern seaboard. So we have to make the distinction relevant. We got to create the historical relevance for us to perpetuate. Oh, thank you. I got one. This is to keep us at a state of being at odds with each other, because we don't know that there was an agreement, a secret agreement that you can get a book on called 10 Years of Secret Diplomacy. And this agreement was specifically to denationalize the true Moroccans. But today, when you say Moroccan, people think you're talking of an Arab. When you say Moroccan to an Arab, you think you're talking about that. But that's not an Arab. Those so-called Arabs who were born generationally in Morocco are the so-called Berbers. You see what I'm saying? They're the Berbers, because they were the product of you going there and being there from time immemorial. They used to call those people Libyans. But there were three types of Libyans. You know what I'm saying? Based upon, again, the amalgamation level of those Moors within that given territory. So once you understand that, now you have to understand why we are at such a crucial situation historically, because we are still not understanding who we are in the whole thing. So if we look at the influence of what created the so-called United States, we have to again look at the interests of the time between the Spanish, the British, and the so-called French. You know what I'm saying? To look at each one of them, you can't lump them all up as Europeans per se, even though they're all from Europe. And you can't look at these people as the same white people that you see running Europe today. You can't do that neither. You got to look at it as a people who are somewhat melanated or deeply melanated, but were following the tenets of today that would lead to what we would call white supremacy, based upon their jealousy and the freedom that their cousins, us, had over here, based upon our governmental structure. Therefore, it was coveted, right? So all the history that you're getting today, and I'm getting today, that you don't go out and verify yourself through your own means and people, right, is basically the reconstructed history that's coming from the minds of Thaddeus Stevens, Horace Greeley, and I think Howard Beecher. Mainly because all of these people were Whigs. The Whigamore Party was a party that started in Britain in the 1700s and then found its way over here. And over here they was calling it the Redmond Whig Party. And these Whigamores were the ones that would wear the wig and come up with all the legislation to disenfranchise certain groups to the point that they can annex them and turn them into corporations on the behalf of the British East India Company, which then lead to all the British companies that went in from that, the British Far East Company, the British Oriental, such and such. But when we say British, we're really saying Albionic, from Albine, original Europe, original so-called reign that was ran from the Isle of Man and the Isle of Wight. So the slaves that were being imported back and forth from the ancient times to the so-called modern times were the people today that we would now call the Circassians, based upon their coming into existence from that whole Yakubian experience that happened towards the early days of the 24th Quran that we just came out of. Quran means clock. Therefore, every 25,000 years we renew our history for another 25,000 years to match a year to every mile, because there's approximately 196,940,000 square miles of land on planet Earth. So based on that, these systems of European rule wanted to find a way to destabilize us based upon us starting to allow them to come over here and do business, so long as they kept that business amongst their own on those so-called colonies. So as that progressed further, it went further south, because by the old Moorish calendar, ancient Moorish calendar, the year 836 to 1196 translates in the Gregorian calendar to 1416 to 1774. So what we're seeing in this discrepancy is the 400 years that they say that they took from you, or that you've been in bondage here, because 300 or some odd of them years, 370 of them years is basically mental prisons that they've done based upon the reconstructed history, by recreating what your physiology was to them, by making you the beast of burden under Title 7, USC. So, on the fact that in 1774 there was no United States, you have to realize then that the people who were there, Madison and these people who call themselves esquires, meant that they were slaves of the beys, or the lord proprietors, as they were called, of the colony. These were the so-called beys of the colonies, the governors of the colonies, Delaware and them, that was holding down the so-called white slaves. These were Moors, who were fair-skinned, wore petticoats, things like that, but traditionally Moors, not Caucasian. The people under them that lived on the colonies doing the toil and the work, these is the so-called serfdom, who were under the jurisdiction of peonage. So in the South, the labor was more, specifically in the West Indies, the labor was more conducive for, let's say, dark-skinned people or whatever. So these Moors is shipping these people out here. But in the North, especially in the New England, Maryland area, Virginia area, all of that was being peopled and planted on plantations and being run by Moors who were enslaving white folk. Because the trade of Christian slaves was a perpetual trade amongst the empire. So Washington, Franklin, Jefferson, these are people who descend from people who descend from people who were under the jurisdiction of these so-called Moors and then grew up under their protection, because these Moors, it was a practice of waging war against each other by proxy. So I'll use this devil and put blacks under his jurisdiction and make you think these white boys is coming up and conquering you, when really this white boy has been put in position by me. And these people really, and the people under him may not know that, but he know that, and in that we working together to destabilize this. This essentially is the relationship between the three so-called headed beasts, Britain, Spain, and France. So Spain is the gateway into the old Moorish Empire through the Morisco bloodline that they want to come through the so-called Toltec Empire that finds its ascendancy around 900 AD, around the same time Charlemagne is doing what he's doing after the Battle of Tours with the Moors of the Franciscan Empire, which is now France, Gaul. So by the time Cortez and these people come over here and try to hold Montezuma and them ransom, they're practicing a form of usury that's not been practiced over here. That wasn't how we got down. That's why a lot of people just fell to them to a certain degree, because this is the Garden of Eden. We wasn't really into that type of heavy conflict the way that these Morisco Christianized Moors are now doing, because they are now functioning under the Templar jurisdiction, which means that they're amalgamating with the so-called Caucasoid slaves that are now being raised, freed, and accepted as maid sons into the so-called Templar black or Moorish Mason system that all got its relationship or validity through Salah ad-Din when he allowed them to set up the day shift. And therefore the Mamluks, the white slaves who were picked out of the herd and put into the Janissary system of Anatolia Turkish influence, now became the ones that these Moors were sending in to fight other Moors and displace other Moors, as well as so-called white boys who were working for Moors in secret, things like that. So everything is zoned out based upon what it is these territories want to do. The brutish, the Spanish just have the vendetta because they know that the Moriscos and all of that came out as traditional darker-skinned Moors that were both from over here as well as over from the continent that they now call Africa, who reached the height of their so-called empire at the time at Granada. But Granada was just like, let's say, the White House, where both sides of the world would get together to build, because remember, we are all Phoenician people. That's how Abu Bakari and them knew how to get over here, because we always been here. We always been going back and forth. But because we start our history based upon their version of time, we're actually losing years within our history in which all of this is put in. And then the word Moor is then recirculated into different things to mean the same thing, but in different ways when it's spoken in different people. So a Moor is a Moor, but a Moor can also be a land of rich sand towards the beach or the surf of a certain landmass on an island, right? Like the Moors of Scotland, the Moors of Spain. So we could be talking about Moors, meaning of individual beings, arm, leg, arm, head, as Moors, or we could be talking about the landmass. But then when you tie something to something, it is moored, especially if it's tied to a tree. Therefore, because Moors have the tree on their flag, you see, they are moored to the land and the sea, and based on a confederation, you see. But when I say confederation, am I talking about the original confederation that existed up until the Civil War, that the so-called Confederacy came out of? You see what I'm saying? Or am I talking about the original Confederacy that I'm still protected by, which is the Free National Constitution, Articles of Confederation? Not to mention my Divine National Constitution that's governed to me by my Moorish Science Temple that exists in America. So, a Moor means love, because the Moors would bring love. The state of love is Amore, right? But a ray is God, right, which is a Moor, and a ray of light, which is what the Moors would bring, you see? To have a lot of something is to have more of it, or to have more of something is to have a lot. A lot was venerated by the Moors, see, in ancient al-Islam as the feminine aspect of Allah, the so-called masculine that only Arabs can find out about through coming into the Asiatic Brotherhood and then going through the system by the right of Egypt, the Cairo, and then going to a Bektashi Sufic order to get the green light. That's why Doc York had the order of the green light, you see, because green is the color of Osar, and Osar was the god of the El, of the Elohim, and the Moors are Eels and Yahweh, El, Elohims, Els, and Yahwehs, Bays. The B and Y in certain Amharic script was flipped, just like the I and the J. So you see how you are sprinkled out through all of these different aspects. So again, you are a Moor, but when you were broken, you became a Moreno, or a Morisco, or a Mudejar, you see, or a Musalam instead of a Muslim. So a Muslim is a Moor. A Muslim is a Sunni. You see, a Moor's occupation is self, which is the second principle of Islam. A Sunni's responsibility in Islam is to worship and to be a slave of Allah. But this was given to them, the religious system of Allah, of Islam, the religion was given to them to stop them from the infighting and killing based upon the nature of which they were grafted and came from. That's why they got black hair. That's why they got dark skin, no matter how much plastic surgery the Shahs of Sunset and all of that get. Shah, to get into that, Shah is short for Padishah. The Padishah comes from the Pashas, and that's us. The Pashas and the Padishahs and the Shahs and the Poobahs, that's all you, the Kasbahs. That's you. That's you as an Al-Moroccan of the Al-Moroccan Empire. But Al-Moroccan means American. How will we prove that? How will we show and prove that? Well, there's a book called The Reconstruction Amendment that I was blessed to become privy to. It says, before the close of 1865, the convention in President Johnson's so-called reconstructed states had given way to legislatures which proceeded to give simple evidence of the spirit that was in the South following the rebellion. The rebellious state started in 1774 when those Moors did not want to come back to the constitutional fold. Therefore, a interim government had to be manifested in a federal sense to allow the transition for the government after the rebellion was done to come back into the constitutional fold. So that's the rebellion that they're talking about. They're not talking about the rebellion of white slave owners that didn't want to give the white Englishmen of the North their ability to own their slaves because they wanted to set up industry. Slavery was industry. So that spirit, that of the Old South, possibly plus the hatred and animosities which the war had engendered, these legislatures were made up principally of officers of the rank and file of the Confederate Army. The Confederate Army that we're talking about, brothers and sisters, is your army, meaning people like you and me who were put out by the war and were now in positions where we had our land and all of that, started to set up legislature to stop these foreigners, these Moors, who were now coming under different nationalities and all of this, to come and take their land, to stop them from doing it. These were members of the Confederacy. Remember, you have the only Confederate Constitution that exists in the world, the Free National Articles of Confederation, the Free National Constitution. That's what your adherence to it is what makes you a U.S. national. Once you become a U.S. national, you are recognized as a man, a Moorish American national. Only, and under that Constitution it says what? All men, or man meaning man and woman, nationals, Moorish American nationals, are created equal. The only document that says that in modern context that was actually written by your forefathers and mine. So what does it say? These legislatures were made up principally of the officers and rank and file of the Confederate Army, and the laws which they proceeded to enact were freighted with prejudice and overloaded with injustice for the emancipated race. You were not emancipated. You couldn't be emancipated because you, as a Moorish American national, as a national of the so-called United States, citizen of the United States, meaning we the people, were never a slave. Think about it. And neither were the undeclared Moors. So who were the slaves? Who were emancipated? If it wasn't you, because you was already free, you was the one who created the parameters for them to have the emancipation. So you did that. So who got free? And remember, emancipate means to what? Transfer ownership. So because these Moors who had entered into relationships with the Deys and received titles of nobility, this is why they told you that the United States government, federal government, cannot give you titles of nobility, because titles of nobility institute or show that they can confer some sort of jurisdiction, and they could not because they were slaves at the beginning, because at the time that they came out of what you had already set in motion, you and your government. Your government enacted the Articles of Confederation, which in order for them to fully be free, for Washington to gain control of the Continental armies, he had to agree to allow the Free National Constitution to become the beginning, the mast, the spearhead, the Aries of the whole thing that y'all want to have for yourself. And y'all got to perpetually protect us. So once they got the right to write laws in on the states that they could enact now as a pseudo-country recognized by the Al-Moroccan Empire or the Al-Moroccans themselves as individuals as well as the Grand Collective, this allowed them now to write on the state laws how they wanted their state to run. So how they wanted their state to run was that all Negroes would be listed as a species of property that they could then create a perpetual bond on because they were in a rebellious state. They were not functioning and adhering to our mandate to let the slaves free. So think about what I'm saying. Think about what we saying. We thinking and we putting together based on even what I'm reading with this, that something else is going on with their so-called history. The way that they've reconstructed it has allowed you to deconstruct it, in a sense, not reconstructed it. We are reverse engineering because the history of the Negro is manufactured. It was created by the substance of what they're doing. So let's go a little further. With the laws which they proceeded to enact were justice for the emancipated race, the so-called white people, the abolitionists. By the amendment of the particular vagrant laws and the system of fines, they proceeded to pave the way, for a type of peonage which contained most of the bad features of slavery and none of its good ones. The children of ex-slaves were put absolutely at the mercy of the stronger race by a system of so-called apprentice laws, which established a relationship of master and servant and endowed the master with absolute control over the minors, thus binding the Negro children to the soil, on the land. Those laws were supplemented by taxation for the blacks who possessed no tangible property. Because remember, we owned everything based upon the fact we always been here. But once we started once these Moors who became Days and started becoming Freemasons through the Prince Hall jurisdiction that came out of the original York Rite establishment of the true Moors along the line of Septimius Severus, Hadrian I, and Constantinius I, under the jurisdiction of Militates, who reigned out of what they now call Italy, but back then, they used to call Arabia. They used to call it Arabia Felix around this time. But because they done whitewashed all of these people, because they got these people tripping over Game of Thrones and the Borgias and the Bible and all of this revisionist history now about white people existing in this time period too, and the only black man to show up is the devil that looked like the black president. Like, it's a whole thing they trying to flip on you, and I'm showing you that there's a reason. This is coming from a distinct system that we, essentially, those of us who didn't want to come back to the constitutional fold, meaning give up, cancel your membership with these fake foreign jurisdictional Moors that was trying to enforce a peonage system to get you to adopt, and then once you adopted, you fell under it because you, by paper, didn't own nothing because you owned everything. Therefore, everything that you really own to get anything in the system that you allowed them to establish there. Like, if we would allow them to establish their own thing and they stayed in their own parameters and did that, shit would have been cool. And then once we went there, it would be like you going to another country. You not necessarily know the laws and all of that, but so long as you write and you rock, there's always something for you to do and be a part of. And you can become citizens of that place. So they citizens of us over here, but they adopting other European titles that unite them under the jurisdiction of the king over there. Which then once they accept, especially by marriage, as a fact that that's what they're going to do, then that means everything that they own over here becomes forfeit too. So now the king can use his marriage to her to come over here and lock everything down. The only reason why Charles V was actually able to help really set up North Carolina like that was due to his ascendancy as Charles Quint in the line of kings through the Inca Empire. Showing you the connection. That this is an empire that was broken down from within based upon peoples identifying with other peoples and not what the original purpose of the people was. So the laws wind up getting, the laws that we instituted to flip on them got flipped on us. The children of ex-slaves were not absolutely at the mercy of this. Now, when we did that, those laws were supplemented by taxation for blacks who possessed no tangible property, which only helped to ensure their dependency, if not their servitude. Isn't that what's going on right now? Then, to cap the climax, assemblages of Negroes were interdicted, and the power was given to the police and magistrates to consider the Negro now. So the original Negro we've already established is the so-called white man or Caucasian man who was being enslaved abroad under the term Christian slave, under the suffrage movement. But they want to make it seem like they was the one enslaving you and all of that. So all of that stuff that Leopold and he's doing, they looked at it as some sort of payback for what we had been doing to them from time immemorial. While it varied in the different states, the spirit and the tendency already cited animate them all. It should be constantly remembered that these unjust laws were enacted before the coming of the carpetbag rule. The carpetbaggers, research that, and were therefore without the excuse with which form of government was supposed to warrant. You see? They bag you up, don't you? When you watch the movies, when they kill somebody, what's the first thing they do? If it's in a house, they look for the rug, right? They wrap them up in the carpet. That's carpetbagging. That's That's another way of saying kidnapping on a judicial level. It has been frequently intimated, if not asserted, that the South was exasperated by having Negro suffrage forced on that section. But such is not the case. At this time, no tangible proposition of this sort having behind any considerable public opinion had been suggested. Probably as extreme as and radical a man as the House of Representatives was Thaddeus Stevens of Pennsylvania. On the 18th of December, Sagittarius, 1865, Mr. Stevens formally opened a debate on Reconstruction in the House. In this speech, there was only a tentative reference to full manhood suffrage. That's another way of saying white people who was enslaved and the fact that they really had no right to do what they were doing, because they had initiated a system that from 1779 had put those Moors who were not going to go into a rebellious state, which classified them as undesirables, of which then they were shipped down to Greenville, Chickasaw County, and took off the boat as Negroes, or shipped off and sent somewhere else and picked up as Indians. The most radical utterances on the subject in this speech was the clear-cut statement that the Negroes without votes should not be reckoned in the basis of the congressional representation in the South. This, in fact, was to become the bedrock of the Reconstruction Act of the rebellious state, meaning that the congressional representation in the House that was so-called Moorish was now disenfranchised based upon the fact that they, in a sense, were traded to their own government, because the real government, which was the Societas Republicae Americanos Estados through the Great Seal, was now in a recess, of which now the federal government was handling its affairs in the meantime. And therefore the so-called Moroccans or Moors, who were the free inhabitants of the country, of the society, and then the empire, were given free rein to go and do what they want. But when these Moors started entering into these contracts, after 1779, they couldn't use their national stuff no more, because they had already been generationally taken out of that. Because once they got shipped down to Mississippi, or what they call Chickasaw County, they then started to then process them based upon whatever place they was taken to. So everything, again, was broken between the so-called Britain, Spain, and France. The Spain thing had infiltrated, the French infiltrated the Washita, the British infiltrated the Lenape, or the people who became the Lenape or whatever through the Iroquois Confederacy, and then the Spanish dealt with the Moors in Florida, Talifa, which is California, Arizona, the Midwest, all of that, the Hopi, Montezuma and all of that. And they worked them based upon the laws that they enacted. So me and the Moor was building on this today, and we went through it. He said, okay, 1524, you got the Black Codes initiated through France. Then in 1740, you got the Negro Act. That's coming through South Carolina, right? So that's British, right? Then you got 1804, the Ohio Registration Law, right? Ohio, that's British connected. British, you know what I'm saying, those so-called countries. 1790, the Sundry Free More Act come out, and they got to acknowledge those that still acknowledging that there is an emperor. Then 1806, you got the business migration law that says only certain blacks can go to certain places to get money. Then from there, 1807, you got the Maryland residence law that then breaks down how many people or Moors can exist within a certain time period or group at once. Then 1830, you got the Louisiana expulsion law that said all the Moors, the true Moors, got to get out of Louisiana in 60 days. Louisiana, again, was a day ship under the Templar jurisdiction based upon the marriage between Henry and Anna Louise, or Anna Maria, and Louise. Which creates Louisiana, and then eventually through them. So this marriage that went through was obviously a political ploy by the Maison de Rouge, in which they was trying to get the Dauphin or whatever they was doing to get the nation to come out of its autonomous state and to accept a title of nobility that would put the Corsican, Napoleon, over them, which would then help them destabilize the empire of Haiti that we call Haiti. 1836, D.C. creates the prohibited law in which they stop so-called African Americans or Africans from trading in America. Then by 1837, the South Carolina curfew law that says niggas can only be out on the street for a certain time, and if they congregate, especially at a 90-degree angle, which means on a corner, they can be stopped, right? Because these were the laws that initially the dark Moors was enforcing on their slaves. This is how they was rocking on them. Then by 1857, Dred Scott, who was a Platonist era and allegedly the grandson or son of Benjamin Bay, now becomes the subject of, by his own misunderstanding of who he was, identified himself as a slave, which is a trademark, which means a different class of people. Back then, a slave was a Slavian, or a Slavian was a Christian, and a Christian of what they call good hue, and that was a white Christian, which was an original slave. Therefore, when he said that he was a slave, he was calling himself outside of that, and therefore he couldn't be recognized by the white man because he obviously was crazy. And as under the Negro Act, by saying that he was under the jurisdiction of a white man, he put himself under the jurisdiction. But it don't matter because he was still a plaintiff in error. Regardless of what he was, his ancestry, again, was of a noble. So somebody or more could come and claim him as their long-lost brother and take responsibility based upon their nationality. But there were no Moors to be found to do that because right after that, the Missouri Compromise came, and that's when they broke it up even further. And so now after 1779, your tribal name had to become your national name. And then once the cracker got you to accept that, they then could accept everything else that came with it. So now it wasn't about the clan of Eel in the name of the Charatagi. It was now Charatagi as the nation. You see what I'm saying? Or Chickasaw, or Panahasua, or Sauk, or Sioux, or Little Sioux, or Whitebeard, or Big Buffalo, or whatever they say. And then the white man know that he was put, or his ancestry was put in a position to hold it as custodian and only giving back to those people that's coming under the name of the true government, the true Moorish American nationals, the true men and women who were mentioned of as the founding fathers, the planters of the organization that they call the United States, that they had to adopt to protect. So if you was coming in any other name other than that, there was no treaty that they had to respect from you because you was going against your own. Therefore, you was a traitor to your own government. And it says right here, like I said, they didn't know which part of the government you were going to function under. That's why there's two seals on the thing, because one represent them, one represent you. But they got you thinking that yours is theirs, because yours is the one with all the money. But they done separated you from your body by you adopting the slave code and the marriage license. That's evidence that you a child or product of Yakub. So science is the knowledge of principles and causes, ascertain truth of facts, This is Webster's Dictionary, 1913. What year did the Moorish Science Temple come out? 1913. Black, according to the science of numerology. 2 plus 3 plus 1 plus 3 plus 2 equals 11, which is knowledge, which is peace, which is wisdom. Right? That's what it's supposed to mean in the positive. In the negative, it means destructive, lacks understanding, wicked, dishonest, devilish, self-indulgent, religiously fanatics, negative, emotional, repressed feelings, prejudice. Ain't that how black people act? So what? I'm somehow for the white man because I can see that in reading this describes the very same people that you are asking me to describe myself in conjunction with. So like I said, I'm not such a stickler or a asshole that somebody said, peace, black man, I'm going to somehow be offended because I know that this brother may not know, but it's not for me in the moment of passing to stop this brother off of what he got to do or what I got to do to school him or what the science is. The law of attraction say that one day he going to come into the real understanding of who and what he is. And I got to give him the right as a man to do that. These people who are given certain knowledge, they don't respect the people that's getting the knowledge from them as equal. Because they feel they got something that you don't. Therefore, that means they're concealing something by implied benefit. They're not keeping it 100. But it's not, again, this is what black is representing, right? Black, according to the science of letters, B, Beth, being, life or death. Beth is the mouth, the dwelling place of the words about to be born. L, fear, sorrow, frustration, and coldness. A, self-centered, opinionated, selfish. Who that sound like? C, gossip, use words unwisely. Who that sound like? K, hidden motives, unsympathetic, moody, thievery, sneakiness, liar. Okay? Colored. Colored is related to the Latin word celare. C-E-L-A-R-E. To conceal, to color up, paint a thing other than in its true light. That's from J.A. Rogers, 100 Amazing Facts of the Negro. Then Ethiopian, a Greek word which we know means Minoan, Ionian, Dorian, Corinthian, or Etruscan, right? Word for burned face. So when your face is burnt off, they say that's an Ethiopian. The word Negro was manufactured during the Atlantic slave trade. Black, inescapable symbolism as the color of negative forces, an unhappy event. It stands for the darkness of death, ignorance, despair, sorrow, evil. Joel Augusta Roger, right, wrote this. All praise is due to him. This is an example of what I'm saying about being in the rebellious state. And how brothers and sisters is still in it and are not realizing how deep they are in it because they are part of aspects of it and not the whole thing. They think they know, but it's not really what you think like that. Because they've obfuscated stuff to such a degree that it's hard to manifest it, where they got you, they don't even know. So when it comes to the history of the Moorish Science Temple, just basic stuff, people don't know. But there's only one main line in regards to what people want to say and how they want to act and what they want to do or whatever. Based on the research and understanding, I know, and I done read, and I done asked as many people who lived at the time, not just read the book. Ask people who was from the time, because there's still a lot of them here. Like I said, it wasn't until I had a fez on one day that my grandmother said, "Oh, you a Moor?" When the same time when I told you her boyfriend, Badu, asked me that. I was like, "You know what that is, too?" She's like, "Yeah, I knew a lot of Moors, the Bays and the Eels and them." I said, "What? Why you ain't never put me on?" That's the first thing I'm thinking. But then again, I know my grandma. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, that was the first understanding the real programming and stuff that I knew something else was going on. And that was just, like I said, in my family. But all of us is coming from this. So all of us is descended from these people that this thing done happened to. And whether we realize it or not, based upon the birth situation and how they've doctored up stuff, this revisionist history that we know as American history is really just a fiction. To be a national of the United States, you got to acknowledge the free national constitution. White boy don't want to do that. That means the power get taken from him. You see what I'm saying? He don't like that. And it's rightfully so, because he's running amok. And he turned everybody in the world against you. And then you just started buck dancing so much that forgot that you was never a nigga to begin with. You ain't never been from nowhere else but here. But they want to get you in domestic situations. So if you get bagged up on the eastern seaboard, that's Britain getting the check. If you bagged up in the Midwest, that's Spain. If you bagged up in the west, that's that's Spain in the west, and like from California all the way down into Arizona and New Mexico and parts of Texas and all of that. All of that's Spanish from the old Spanish land grant. So if you get bagged up, those are the people who eventually getting the serial numbers off the bonds or whatever they're doing. The Spanish government. You get caught up on the East Coast, in Florida, That's the only East Coast part, I think, that they in like that. Florida. If you in the East Coast like that, you know what I'm saying, specifically up top, Ohio, all that, that's Britain. And in the middle, that's all France. So the West and Florida and Arizona and all that, that's Inquisition type. Britain and all of that, that's Tower of London type punishment or whatever they do. And then the middle, that's the chattel slavery torture type. That's the Louisiana Day Templar shit. And that's how they do it. So the main line through Noble Jew Ali and all the people before him that comes through the Moorish Science Temple in those temples is the Emily Ill line. That's it. C. Kirkman Bey, that's cool and all of that, you know what I'm saying? But the stuff I'm reading, I'm just looking to find the document. I'm trying to get the redacted documents that got the name that's blacked out and the FBI reports out through the Freedom of Information. And then that'll show and prove 100% what I'm saying. So when you see pictures of Hoover with the fez, that's not a Shriner fez, a real regular Moorish fez, and then you see these other dudes, you know what I'm saying? You see him with the name Colonel, like Colonel Kirkman Bey, like I don't know. That's Army intelligence right there. Now, again, this ain't a demonstration against anybody that's in the temples that he initiated, because they got the most members, believe it or not. But it is to say that on the outside looking in, just like on the inside looking out, it's a different perspective. And based upon the stuff that's out that I'm researching and reading and stuff, I'm seeing something totally different. So how do we know that Moorally ill is in that? Well, from a letter to Moorally ill from the judge who was in court with them to see who the real one was, it says, "Dear sir, kindly acknowledging the receipt of $120 for the professional services rendered in the case of Moore Science Temple of America Corporation, C. Kirkman Bay versus Moorally ill. This is to further state that the verdict was entered in favor of the defendant, which yourself, Moorally ill, which is yourself, Moorally ill. Municipal Court, Room 913, born, knowledge, understanding, on May 7th, knowledge, born, understanding, knowledge, meaning 1931. Case number 746990. So again, this is from Wendell N. Green. It's real talk, man. That's in plain language, man. This is the general rules of practice. Rule 220, birth certificate. Peace to the Moor who did the knowledge and sent it through. The Register of Titles is authorized to receive for registration of memorials upon any outstanding certificate of title, an official birth certificate pertaining to a registered owner named in said certificate of title showing the date of birth of said registered owner, provided there is an attached said birth certificate, an affidavit of affiant who states that she is familiar with the facts recited, stating that the party named in the said birth certificate is the same party as one of the owners named in said birth certificate of title, and that thereafter the registrar of titles shall treat said registered owner as having attained the age of majority at a date, not maturity, majority, at a date, 18 years after the date of the birth shown on said certificate. So what does all of that mean? What that means is, at the time that the birth certificate is given to you, you're supposed to be given a document that says that they're creating an artificial person out of this being that you told them the name of, and that the birthplace of this person is 55 Water Street. And that you, the baby, because you're a minor, meaning that you're a Negro, you are a ward of the state. Therefore, you in free jail, which is living outside the prison walls. So in free jail, you have the wardens and the COs who are the police who could kill you. So because you're in free jail, you are acknowledging that this baby that's under your protection, jurisdiction, is basically yours in title, not name. The name is attached to the birth record that they had already sent to 55 Water Street and put in the waters beyond the sea. Therefore, separating the soul of the child or the body of the child from the labor that they're going to put on the body of the child. Why do they do this? Then, after they give you the thing that says that they're doing this, you're supposed to sign on to that in a third party, somebody else. So they're giving you a third party out. That's usually the father who don't really know. That's why when you have a baby, even if you don't want them to be Moors, man, just put the ill or the bay at the end of their joint, man, with a hyphen. If that's what you know what I mean? If you just do something to protect your child, man. This is real, man. These people are horrible. And I'm showing you an institutionalized thing based upon this 10 years of secret diplomacy that these people worked in secret while warring with each other, while helping us at the same time. There's a faction of them still dealing in secret to denationalize you. Not the you that was in Africa, not the you that was in Europe, but the you that was in the so-called North, Central, and South America, what they now call in Africa. And they done made you think that they brought you over here in chains as a slave, when the chain slavery that they brought you down was when they put you on a boat and brought you down the Mississippi River into Charleston or one of the other ports that they had, then told the person that you came from or they was bringing you from that they brought you from Africa. Because you were a Negro, which was an undeclared Moor who put himself and herself outside of the constitutional fold by not adhering to the Articles of Confederation, by being able to be amongst the colonies and the people, the pilgrims and stuff, but not partaking in their shit. We give them everything, and then we want to go amongst them and take everything too. So there were no state laws or whatever written on our behalf or our government, because we didn't really start writing shit down until after the 1600s, really. Thank you, buddy. So essentially, it just becomes a conundrum of different people vying for control over different tracts of land and using the original man who had been denationalized and depopulated and listed as a minor. Therefore, even though it's the majority of them around, it's more of us around than them. They are still in a superior position because they have taken the superior mental position through trickery. And those Moors that caught on were the so-called Masons. They were the ones let in to a degree. But then they had to pledge the secret and the oath of death that they would keep the secret and keep it running too. So they would inform on you and all that other stuff. So when the white man was coming to destroy those Confederate cities that were against the whole Union thing, that was them rolling against your ancestors. And then your ancestors having to leave down south and come up north. And then those up north having to go down south. And then those both going into the Midwest. Because we have family everywhere. That's why you got family everywhere. I'm probably related to every Wilson that's out here. Because this is Al-Oscar. But what they did was take Al-Oscar, the Wilsons and the Rogers. That's all Cherokee. But I know that that's not my nationality. That's my tribal affiliation. You see what I'm saying? But in that, when Matthew Henson got up there, the Inuit people looked at him and was like, yo, we've been waiting for your people for mad long. Where y'all been? Matthew Henson is Taraji P. Henson's great-grandfather. So what, she just got there? No doubt she's talented and all of that. But she destined to do all of that. She destined to break new ground and stuff. Look at who her ancestor was. This is a woman who should be out there, you know what I'm saying, exploring these caves or paying for it. You know what I'm saying? And erecting museums and shit like that in their name. These niggas don't do that. What these niggas do? They make a clothing line, right? They make some bullshit for you to give them more money. That's not how it works. You don't need money to be a philanthropist. You just got to uplift fallen humanity. That's all you got to do. And now the prophet created a way for you to be protected in doing it. So it says, thank you, man. It says in Act, what is this? 1666, chapter 11, 18, and 19, chapter 2. An act for redress of inconveniences by the want of the diseased of persons beyond the seas, or absenting themselves, upon whose lives estates do depend. The recital Sesqui Trust, this is a Sesqui Trust, have gone beyond the sea, and have revisionists cannot find out whether they are alive or dead. This was the people in the colonies that were locked up or was being brutalized amongst each other so much that they basically disappeared or was enslaved and put into bondage in Virginia or whatever. They didn't know what happened to them. So essentially, they needed to do something with their estate because the king still got to get his money. You know what I'm saying? Whether or not you're alive or not, the king still got to get his money. So, whereas the diverse lords of manors and others have granted estates by lease for one or more of the lives, leases for one or more lives, life or lives, or else for years, determinable upon one or more life or lives, and it has often happened that such person or persons for whose life or lives such estates have been granted have gone beyond the sea, or so absented themselves for many years that the leaseors and revisionors, right, the buyers and the lenders, cannot find out whether such person be alive or dead, by reason whereof which the leases or revisioners have been held out of possession of their tenements for many years. After all, the lives upon which estates depend are dead in regard that the leaseors or revisioners, when they are brought actions for the recovery of their tenements, have been put upon it to prove death of their tenements, which is almost impossible for them to discover the same. For remedy of which mischief so frequently happen to such leasers and revisioners, the Sesquiwe Trust remaining beyond the sea for 7 years together, and no proof of their lives, judge in action to direct a verdict as through the Sesquiwe were dead. If such person or persons whose life or lives such estates shall be granted, Alfred said, remain beyond the seas or elsewhere, absent themselves, out of their right mind, being minors, being low in understanding, not existing, being Negroes, right? Themselves in this realm. Now, what realm are they talking about? They're talking about the realm of the king, the realm of the landlords, which was us, and the realm of the empire. By space of 7 years together, and no sufficient and evident proof may be the lives of such person or persons respectively, and any action commenced for the recovery of such tenements by the leases or revisioners. In every such case, the person or persons upon whose life a life estate dependent shall be accounted as naturally dead, and in every action brought for the recovery of the said tenements by the leasers and revisioners, their heirs or assignees. That's why you list your children as your heirs. You do an affidavit of heirship for your children. You see what I'm saying? That's validated by the recorder of deeds or whatever it is. So that way they know they're not dealing with children or families. They're dealing with houses and nobles. These judges before whom such action shall be brought shall direct the jury to give their verdict as if the person so remaining beyond the seas or otherwise absenting himself were dead. So they told you that regardless to whether or not you was a party to it or not, you will be tried and brought to account of the so-called birth certificate if you have not made the distinction that you are not the person after the first 7 years of life. That's why they start accosting young black males earlier, because they're getting their consent over the young black males earlier and earlier. Because the parents are relying on the system to raise their children. Therefore, the parents are minors because the parents are not aware of the history of their government. Therefore, the United States have understood that they have what? Abandoned themselves of their own government, their mind, body, and soul, because your soul belonged to this one, to France, your body belonged to England, and then, no, your soul belonged to France, Louisiana. Your body belonged to England, which is New England, New York, all of that. And then your mind, body, and soul. Yeah, and then your soul is like California and all of that. They just split it up. So when you rescind the birth certificate, that's evidence of rescinding the certificate, but you have to agree to rescind all three if that's what you're going to do. But if you're going to do that, then puts you outside and makes you an undesirable by the so-called United States, even if you got money. That's why they can put people like Lil Wayne and these people in jail, but keep people like Lindsay Lohan and these people going back to court. Because Lil Wayne is under the beast of burden. That's why he calls himself a beast. That's why they refer to themselves as beasts. They be beasting on you because they all animals. They all treated as animals because they, by their own consent, have put themselves under the jurisdiction of Negroism by perpetuating it and by signing contracts to manufacture it. That's why you have white niggas now, Indian niggas now, Chinese niggas, Japanese niggas, Korean niggas. Everybody's a nigga now. Because they and the United States owns that. And they have the right to own that because that's what they created. And they created it off the backs of the niggas that decided that they was not going to be what their forefathers was. And they had the right to do that. This is where objectivity has to come in, and you got to take the rage out of what I'm really saying. Because the things that they're doing today is coming from a system that has been perpetuated initially by your ancestors who was mad that they had to conform to what was going on. So they started making deals with other entities that brought their form of jurisdiction over to protect them from you, from them having to deal with you personally. And then by adopting that system, they then had to adopt the system slaves who were the white males who were being groomed to position themselves as the pseudo-overlords of the country while they can run everything in secret. This is the true relationship with the whole Boule thing and all of that. But these niggas are still cut off from the European niggas to a certain degree. The European niggas is more hooked up with the African niggas. But they both are secondary under the Arab to a degree. Because the Arab is flipping everything. So in the Arab world, the Filipinos and the Indians are the niggas that they treat like niggas over there. You know what I'm saying? That's the system, how they flipped it over there. Because everybody that came through Ellis Island came to agree to go through the system of naturalization that established itself after 1863 that was different from the naturalization process of 1887. The Articles of Confederation states that in Article 12, all bills of credit emitted, monies borrowed, and debts contracted by or under the authority of Congress, you, before the assembling of the United States, the government, you, in pursuance of the present Confederation, your state of Morocco that you exist in now, shall be deemed as considered a charge against the United States for the payment and satisfaction whereof the said United States and the public faith are hereby solemnly pledged. So our Moorish forefathers, as the Constitution is acknowledged and reorganized the debt of the United States Constitution in 1787, which is the original nationalization thing I was talking about, Article 6, hence the Constitution, bankruptcy occurred on January 1st, 1788. So in January 1st, 1788, based on the 21 loans that we gave the United States of America received from the King of England, because the King of England was under the jurisdiction of the old Moorish Empire. You got a treaty with him because he was your cousin. So that's your money. And as a Moor, you're a bailiff of 100. So any jurisdiction that a European is running, you have the ability to run. The repayment of which had been ratified by Congress January 22nd, 1783. The United States Bank, created in 1791, was a private bank with 18,000 of 25 shares owned by England. No de jure constitutional Congress has existed since March 27th, 1861. And 7 southern states walked out of the Congress, leaving the Congress without a quorum for the adjoining and therefore ending sine die, until we meet again. That which is called Congress today assembles and acts under the authority of the President, acting in the capacity of being Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces under the Emergency War Powers Rule, i.e. law of necessity, i.e. ibid no law, i.e. colorable law, ibid no law, which has never been repealed and still exists under Title 50 U.S.C. So when people tell you that you can be sovereign, how can you be sovereign if you have to receive your sovereignty from somebody you gave sovereignty to? How does that make sense? How are you actually able to do that? So great, you get rid of the birth certificate, you cash it in, you get money from it. What are you doing for your own people? What are you doing to reestablish the nation and take it out of the sine die to full de jure? To make it a loca fruticitis absita posteristante. Things ain't ready for that. And it's not for everybody. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, in the end, what we're really here to do is to remind each other that there is a way and a method to this madness, that this devil is not just a devil for no reason. The English C lesson tell you. The gods told me in 91. Wu-Tang told me in 92. The God Raquan, when he gave me the English C lesson, gave me the math right there. There's a degree that says, why did your uncle leave his own country? He left his own country because he was promised to receive more gold for the land, for his labor, than the gold that he was already receiving in his own land. Did he receive more land? Did he receive more gold? God now cipher. No. Because once he agreed, cool, I'll go down south and do that, he was now kidnapped and put into the Bermuda Triangle. The Berber, Moorish, Gay Triangle. The Bermuda. The Berbers who were muted and turned into days, or put in a daze and wrangled off, based upon this ancient agreement between these people. So I'm showing and proving to you that you have an actual government that's connected to this one, and that they have been acting like you since then. That's why when you claim to be who you are, you got to come correct, because you are the government. You are the United States. So when they say it's a threat to national security, you're the national that they're securing. But you have to realize you are national and go through the proper channels to do it, and not get riled up under the Negro demonstration, or the red, black, and green demonstration, or the Kemite demonstration, or the Army demonstration, or any of these different demonstrations that's out there for you to choose from, for you to gamble on whether it's real or not. You ain't got it. At this point in the game, if you're just coming into it, bless you. But what you're coming into is something that is becoming what it's supposed to be. Therefore, we can't expect something that we are just figuring out to be what it's going to be. But we can, at the same time, take advantage of each other's ignorance in the process of doing that. Because that is what's creating the Negro Sestuiqui Trust. And I've just showed you that the Sestuiqui Trust was created for those that's beyond the sea. So we really got to come out. So your free national constitution has been in effect since. The Sestuiqui Trust is the 1666 Trust. This is the other 200 years that they talk about, that they added to your calendar. So the triangle trade also represents Britain, France, and Spain. The only reason why our free national names is British now is because that's the main court that we was doing our business through at the time. That's why after the true Moorish Empire fell and the Turkish Empire fell, the Brits were the ones to inherit everything. And then the Bavarian Germans wrestled it from them. And then the United States Corporation, acting as our benefactors, using us as beasts of burden to whip us into shape, to realize who and what we really are now using us to then take over their jurisdiction and then turn all their jurisdictions white, because they have already created something called a naturalization process of 1863 that allows them to create Negroes under the guise of what was then called immigrants. Get the book How the Irish Became White. These people didn't become white until after World War II. There's some white people that don't consider anybody that's not pure what they consider white. And that's all based upon an inferior creation created by Thaddeus Stevens and these people to maintain the power balance between us and use and tip the thing in their favor where the racial discrimination is us at the bottom and them at the top. That's how it's been since 1779 and let's say 1865. But let's look at that. That's only like 85 years. So are we so bold to say then that slavery itself has only existed, chattel slavery as we understand? Think about what I'm saying. You don't need so-called paperwork to function and do what you do. Just like you don't need to necessarily eat every so-called hour or whatever. However, if you are walking in physical reality, well, let me use a better example. You don't need shoes to walk around. But in physical reality, unfortunately, you have incarnated into a place where you have to do certain things to function. And if you want to be unsolicited in a manner where all you got to do is mail somebody a letter or whatever, and at least it's on file that you can receive recovery off the rip for whatever happens, as well as restitution, as well as reclamation. All you got to do is follow that. But to some people, that's too much. And that's okay. You don't have an army and none of that yet. Well, you do, but that army is under their jurisdiction, and they can't relinquish it to you because you have not reconstituted your government. You understand? Your government has not reconstituted itself. You walked out of the whole situation that they were dealing with in 1787, formally. You declared your independence of all physical beings in 1774. You did? But you never came and reconvened what the original Congress was set out to do. So they can create whatever history they want about this place and rock with it because you are not coming in the name that was left for them to take. If you go to a restaurant today and you leave your coat, they give you a ticket. And if you have to leave that restaurant suddenly or whatever, and then 10 years later forget who you are, if you have that ticket, you have evidence of the fact that you left that coat and that coat is yours, whether it's there or not, correct? So now apply that same rationale to a country, government, or people. And then apply that to a people who have made themselves to believe that they are foreign of who they are. They have been taken from Africa. Therefore, they are not who they are here. Therefore, they are transient people. Therefore, they are people in flux. Therefore, they are something that is not finite, real, concise, sufficient, distinct, direct. They can be whatever I say that is. But you, however you want to copyright, man can try to copyright the word more, the paper probably burn up in his face. Because you can't copyright something that already is. You can have all the paperwork in the world. One signature of me on it cancel all of that out. That's how much power I got in the game, but they have turned me into the horse. And so I'm riding for them and not riding for me and you. So until you and I figure out how to reconstitute our government, all we can do is speak for ourselves individually and unify through something like Moor Science Temple, because out of everything that I've understood, and the truest meaning of it, it's the most inclusive of everyone, but follows a nationalistic and divinistic point of view that is all-inclusive, yet totally distinctive, and does not allow for a certain degree of folly for those people to do, because you're dealing with such a high level of science that they all bear witness to. You could read the Negro Act and all these other acts that I read tonight. The Reconstructed, you could read all of that. The Southern Black Codes that basically stripped the blacks to vote, and all of this was going up until Brown versus Board of Education. So from 1866 to, what was that, 1853, 1854, right before the last Moorish Council closed, they created civil rights for you to move you away from a nationalistic point of view. So if somebody says, oh, so you're a nationalist. No. You are part of a divine national movement. Because national means nature to you when it's talking about you, because you created the only constitution in modern times that says that all men are created equal. But to be a man, you got to be a Moorish American national. So you could be an RBG and all of that. But when it comes to that, look, nigga, when it comes to this so-called governmental ID, put the eel of the bear on back of on the end of your name, man. Put this turban on, put this fez on, and just do what you got to do, G. Put a red, black, and green turban around if that's what you want to do. You know what I'm saying? You can still be all of that. But when it comes to certain things, just know how to govern yourself, man. And stop making us look bad or making us look money hungry or look like we all trying to just get everybody for what they got or get trapped up into or how black history is not the same as Moorish science. And it's been 100 years. You understand? And it's people that's just finding out. It's people just today, like while I'm talking. It's just people right now, like, wow, there's such a thing called a Moor. It's people like that right now. That's not even listening to me. That's reading books and shit like, wow, these people really existed. Like, wow, well, these people look black. Yeah, because they are. So then what happens? They want to go online and they want to find out about who, if that exists, and people like that today. And then they got to sift through all of the trough of bullshit that exists. That's both counter-revolutionary and counterproductive, as well as government influence, to get to 1 ounce of truth. But that's what is the process of becoming the hero in the story, man. That's the process of us becoming who we're supposed to be. We're supposed to go through these so-called things. And some of us go through it more extreme than the others based upon our level of involvement and based upon how many people how much hate or anger or grudges we hold against these people around us. Because that shit attracts this type of energy, because this system is really set up to bind them. That's why they get so crazy when you're able to just build on it in a manner that's calm and to the point. It's beyond the fact that you are more. Now, what I'm talking about is beyond that. Like, that's being a more is like, that's like saying you breathe, you're a human. Of course you're that. They look at you like you. That's why they look at you like you bug. Like, wow, you really remember? Because this is the secret. This was passed on to them. The butler that was working for the white family was the old nigga who at the turnover didn't want to give up his land and agreed to be the chief butler over the imported slaves as they come in and force feed them the Jesus shit and the fake revolution shit and the white man is God shit and the Africa shit. You understand? And it's the same thing going on today. I'm not saying nothing that niggas don't know. That's why I could say it. I'm not under the obligation because it's not a secret. This is what everybody knows going on. It's just that our people still, they not going to believe it. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not being overly harsh or I feel being like I'm negating people. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that over 85 to 95% may feel it and know it's true, and it's still not going to change anything for them. And I'm being real with you. Because they have put themselves in it so deep that it's beyond now their nationality. It's about a lesson now. It's about some internal shit. It's about, you know what I'm saying? It's about some shit they going through spiritually. And if you play with this on some spiritual shit, it's not like that. Take your time. Remember, this is really our thing. So once you know what the keys are, you know how to get it and who to talk to do it. You don't talk to the ones who's under peonage. You set it up all how it's supposed to go, through the seat of the government. But you got to understand what that is. It's not hopeless. It's not. And it's easier than you think. The niggas that's making it hard is the niggas who's acting like they know the most about it. And they only doing that because a lot of them have been taught that. That's the other side of the game. There's people who are taught this form of understanding about it, and it's wrong, and it's not true, and they know. Some of these people are under oath and death obligations. Some of these people are just doing it because it was done to them. Therefore, a masonry is not a divine and national movement. Semite civilization, in a sense, is not, let's say, a divine and national movement. There's divinity in it. You know? Islam is not a divine national movement. None of these things are. The only thing that is the more science temple. There's the physical one and there's the inner physical one. Once you control both, you rule the world. That's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm understanding now. Like, okay, I can do less and get more. And still be as productive as half the work I was doing because I know what they're doing. Okay, you flipping the law of necessity on me. I understand why you're doing that. Because we didn't go and reconvene that. Okay, well, I'm going to let you know on our end, we understand that we are that. And based upon these treaties, we are reconvening that. I don't give a damn what these other people have told you they are. I don't even know those people. And even if I do, they have nothing to do with what I'm talking to you about. Because I'm not mentioning them. If they was a part of what I was doing, they would be in this letter. They're not in that. So they don't talk to me about none of that. I don't give a damn what anybody is talking about or saying, or you can't do this, or Moors is this, or they can say what they want. I'm showing you in law. These niggas say whatever, man. You know what I'm saying? You talk to a nigga, I got my degree through a correspondence university, meaning online, or after the initial setup. This is how I got it. By going through the actual situation, using my physical situation as evidence to the fact. Thank you. Evidence to the fact that this is what they're running on us. So then what? I go to get a job because in America they say, oh, once you get a PhD, you this, that, right? This niggas in there, I'm seeing niggas in there with degrees from DeVry, from ITT, the shit you see on TV. These niggas is getting promoted. I'm like, what the hell's the problem? I'm more qualified than everybody. Oh, well, you too qualified. Okay. Exactly. Because you know you can't take no money out my check. And that means you got to pay for that money. Because you, my surety, he's evidence to the fact that he did something for me. So when he filed that, he get money back from them to say that he treated me right as an employee. But he got to pay taxes for me. So eventually he don't want to do that because that's a hit for him. So he probably only be there a year, 2 years. But when you get in there with the right master mason, you be straight. Most of the obstacles that you'll get will come from people that look like you. March 27th, 1861. You have been under a fascist rule ever since. It don't matter what they tell you that happened in Grenada and all of that, in World War II and all that. All of that was based on what the Prophet did. That's why the Prophet could do it. Because they had already bonded themselves out of everything. So they had to rebond themselves back to Europe. And then create the 14th Amendment, which essentially was an Roman Catholic ecclesiastical trust, which basically was a Sesquippedalian trust because we are beyond the sea from them. So they don't know who is real Catholic and who not. So they got to do inspections based upon the inquisitional law. It says they got to put their finger in the rectum of the boy to see how loud the scream is, because that's how they tell if it's a real Catholic or not. This is how deep these things be going, yo. And it's protected by them through secret. And secret is bonded through the brotherhood. It's shielded by the brotherhood. So under the ecclesiastical trust, that's why the Catholics could tell you that you're a mud person and this, and that. And they still claim you at Notre Dame games and stuff like that. Because you're a beast of burden to them. You're something that they've created, a Negro. Something that only grows to the knee, the thing that they used to be. That's why all of their grandfathers and forefathers all get their money around the same time. Right around the time of the Cherokee, the Confederate War. Get the book about John Noble Lee Pops, John Drew, the Confederate Cherokee. The Confederacy has a whole different meaning. You don't have to reenact your history. You are your history. They got to reenact the part that they actually showed valor. That's why they do that. That's a system of supplication they learned under Salah ad-Din when they were Mamluks. You an ancient Al-Moroccan being, man, that lost sight of that and fell under the jurisdiction. You was too free. They ain't like that. And they created all of these trusts and these things to lock you up into, to separate you from your divinity. And then teach you their version of divinity so you could acquiesce to them in silence by ignoring letters or being rude to them for no reason, things like that black people do. But I showed you why black people do that. Because the term black has all these conjured connotations that have been set on it. This is the premise. That's why you got to claim your nobility and come through the main line. As they say, walk the line. You got to know who that is and why they don't want you to why they want to suddenly try to categorize you, say you don't exist, and lump you in with everybody else because you're not. You a different kind of nigga, and that's the problem. When you get to the real subject of who and why, then it really gets a problem. But you got to start with the basics, and the basic is to just declare that you have one and that you are part of something that existed and that still exists, and that you are in full support of and understand is an aspect of who and what you are, and that you are the government that has been foretold. You are the promised land that was seen by Martin Luther King, that he could not go to based upon his Masonic obligation and affiliation with Lucifer. But Lucifer was Baphomet, which was really a code created to shield the grandmasters to the fact that they were really under the jurisdiction of Salah ad-Din and learning how to be Moors in the shrine. And it was a sword that they said they used to keep at the upper part of the shrine, where when you walked in, if you came in with some negative shit and energy, it would just swing down and kill you. That's where the adepts and the people who became sultans came from. These Moors, who was functioning of that, were the lords who used to rule as the secret caliphs. These were the ones that was connected to us. This is the Alumbrados network that eventually evolved into the Ansaratic Brotherhood, of what we call the Asiatic Brotherhood, of the original Asiatics of the Canaanite line going all the way back to El and Asherah, the true Hebrew, the true angelic being, the Loka Forticitus Obsita. So we are on the land beyond the sea. See what I'm saying? I'm on the land, beyond the sea. You don't have no jurisdiction over me. You see what I'm saying? Because I understand, and through my prophet was brought the word of Yehoshua and Isa and Buddha and all of that in the form of one understanding, unified in one archetype that looked like me, that spoke and showed the true knowledge like me. Asiatic people, for once, that's not going to jail or whatever. And the more I'm reading, the more I'm like, how is this all going on? And I'm growing up reading about black history based on my mom's being, literate and shit. Reading about the stuff, I'm not seeing none of this. I'm seeing little traces of, like, Mason stuff, but I'm not seeing, like, the heavy shit. I'm looking at this like, wow, this is really deep. Like, these people, and then the deeper I get, I'm like, wow, we was out. Niggas really didn't put me on. So by the time I'm to the point where my grandmother's around and she's saying, oh, yeah, I know they bees and the eels. I'm like, oh, word. Word, you know them too? Okay. And now you telling me? Okay, great. And that's what I'm saying. I know the difference now, so I don't fall under the same category as everybody that don't know. So based on that, I'm not going to do what everybody else going to do because that's not for me. Therefore, I'm not telling anybody to do anything that they don't want to do. I'm just saying I know what I'm doing. Therefore, anybody that want to know, holler at me directly because unlike these other people, I don't like putting all my business in the street like that. That's the old school way. Going all the way back before Timbuktu, you know what I'm saying? But now we live in an age where niggas done forgot that they even built the pyramids. They done gave that all to the white man. They just said, oh, nah, the Illuminati built that. Like, word, Horus was in the Illuminati. That's what you're saying. If you're saying Horus was in the Illuminati, you're saying Ogun was in it too. So word, they both was in it? Okay. They both was in it with Jay-Z. Okay. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? And that's what I'm trying to say. Like, the pattern that is trying to be established is the new evolved version of the niggerdom history that's been redistributed and remanufactured to you as a cultural idiom that they'll refer to as Americana or something like that. So long as you don't fall victim to that, once you have a nationality, none of that stuff matters anymore. Because now you're dealing with things in real time, in real space. So you're not bound by the rulings of petty discourse. So you don't attribute yourself to the things that these people are doing because you understand that you are basically an emissary of the original government that has been in the process of reconstituting itself for the past from 1774 to now, 2013. That has been trying to reconstitute itself. But it's been constantly blocked out by both the United States and its own constituents. Because your own people don't want you to run nothing no more. I know black Americans. The first thing they say once they say a nigga's running some shit is like, oh, it ain't gonna work, it's gonna be broke. Like, you know how niggas do. Everybody do that to you. But that's because they turned you into a beast of burden. Once we address that, it's pretty much a wrap. So if Moors ain't talking to you about this, buddy, they wasting your time. Because this is what you're really doing it for. You're not really doing it not to just deal with the cops and all of that. You're not doing it to overthrow nothing. You're not doing it because you agree with any Islamic faction or any black militant group. You're not doing none of that. You're not doing this for that. You're not even a part of that. Sorry. If you think you are, then maybe you should go further into that and be that. But that's not what I'm doing. The United States government don't have nothing to do with what I'm doing other than once it's done, making sure that these other niggas don't fuck with it. To be vulgar, sorry. But sometimes you got to be direct. And that's real. So I'm not functioning from the position of, they're going to do something or do, because that's not what I'm here to do. They ain't never seen nothing like what we talking about, because what I'm talking about ain't nothing to do with them. And really, is really about working in harmony with the system without becoming a victim of it. How you think white people don't go to jail? There's a reason, and I just laid it out for you tonight. If anybody who knows anybody who do transcripts, man, because they doing it. I just don't have time to sit there, and I don't have the money to order it from them to do that, and I ain't going to give them no more money other than what I got to keep the shit running. So if you know somebody who do that, know how to do that, and want to go through that periodically and, compile them all together, we could both go in together, publish it as a book, man. It's some real shit. Because this stuff I'm seeing within this that it's going to take years for people to really, really do the knowledge. So those of us that are doing the knowledge now is just doing it based upon this is what we got to do. But this is the beginning of who you really are. This is just the first step. So you think it's just about filing paperwork, or you ain't got to do that, all that word, okay. Well, you ain't got to flap your wings either, but if you want to stay in the air, you better do something. You dig what I'm saying? There's a method to things, and there's a reason that things that your ancestors set up that look like the white man, but the white boy got you thinking that he made it, that his people did it. That's the trick, man. That's that Yakub shit. That's that splitting you from your body, making you believe into a mystery God, making you beyond the sea so that way they got to list you as you probably dead. So based on that, we have to function on the capacity, justice, and equality. That's the only way it's going to work. So those people that want to do that, holler at me at houseofel@hotmail.com. And we're going to have some stuff again to announce soon, inshallah. And for those people that's been helping us in the struggle, thank you. It's been greatly appreciated. The people I've spoken to recently who have donated and continue to, thank you. We have a Kickstarter up under the name Dark Skull 418. If you wish to donate or know somebody with big bucks, blowing it on strippers, tell them to send it to Kickstarter.com, Dark Skull 418, so they can donate to the color version of the book. Because in order to do everything else we're doing for the actual people, that is just almost a necessary luxury. So I want to be able to sustain it and bring the next level of it so that way we can turn the Sunday school thing into a real manifestation of what we're talking about by using the book as a conduit. So based on that, anybody want to check out the book, go to www.darkskull418.com. You can go to www.aseer.thedukeoftears.com. Again, you ain't never going to hear it no clearer, no more direct. You know what I'm saying? For those people who may be working in these establishments, these government people, these listening places that they got set up and shit, like they know. So us doing something for ourselves is necessary for us to maintain who we are. So in that, thank you for the support. And again, if you want to donate, you go to PayPal, thedukeoftears@gmail.com. And again, all zakat is welcome. And again, man, love and light. Also, we're going to have the announcement next week of the opening of the temple down here. So everybody, please tune in next week. Tell a friend. Everybody that's really serious, you know what I'm saying, let's holler. And we're going to, this is Grand Sheik. It's really dope. So based on that, love and light, you know what I mean, we got to do what's right, support each other as much as we can based on all of the crap shit that's going. You know what I'm saying? Both from all sides, yo. I'm not just talking about black people, I'm talking about all people that's on this white supremacy shit. So again, man, we're going to end off with the Moorish prayer. And we're going to strive to do that at the end of every show. Our Moorish prayer is Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, and equality. Allah is my protector, my God, my salvation by night and day. Through his holy prophet, Noble Jew Ali. Amen. So again, man, do what you need to do. Holler at me at houseofel@hotmail.com. Check out cookinmorewithless.com, www.cookinmorewithless.com, as well as www.sagaasad.com. And man, let's get it in. And again, man, stay away from the bullshit. Stop wasting your time with niggas and trying to put niggas on the shit they already committed to. You know what I'm saying? It's a waste of your time. Keep it moving. So love and light, do what's right. Inshallah, we'll speak to you again another night. Peace.